Hello again, I'm Blunty and welcome to the fifth and final installment of this series of beginners vlogging guide to tips thingy. And this time we're talking about the kind of gear that can enhance your video blogs. The kind of stuff you don't really need to get it done, but makes your life a hell of a lot easier. And we're going to be talking about lighting, and we're going to be talking about sound. We're going to talk about lights themselves, or using natural light and using microphones, and little tricks that can just make your videos, give you a little bit more flexibility in how you make your videos. Now, before we get running into the hints and tips proper, I want to announce the second and final winner of the Bloggie camera that I've had to give away. And it goes to someone who goes by the tag of gmango2126. And he was asking questions relevant to this particular video. Blunty, how is it you get such good sound quality when there is wind and all sorts of background noise outside? And that's why I'm standing all the way back here, because when I did a video, the previous video, I was standing quite a distance from the camera. The microphone on the camera had no hope of picking me up clearly whatsoever, and I was outside in the wind and the noise in the background and stuff. Now, the trick to it is this, and some of you managed to pick up on this in the comments section. Some of you asked about it and I told you about it, but I'm going to tell you right now. The trick is, the Bloggie camera that I've been using as a prop in the videos, I've had that running, so you're actually getting the sound from this microphone, which is right next to me all the time. And I just sync up I rip the audio out of the video from this camera, because obviously most of the time it's pointing at the ground or something, and I add it to the vision from that camera, and bam, you get nice clear sound no matter how far away from your camera. I mean, I can go for a walk all the way back here, keep going back, hopefully not trip over something poisonous, because, you know, I am in Australia and we're full of poisonous animals over here, and you can hear me perfectly fine, and I'm all the way back here. You would never ever hear me on that camera. Let's just switch to that mic for a second. Hello, can you hear me? No, you've got no idea. And this trick, you know, most people out there might not have two cameras to do this trick with, but there are several other cheap alternatives you can do the same trick with. You can use your mobile phone. I've got an external microphone that plugs into my iPhone, for example, that I often use for this trick when I'm interviewing people and we're standing back from the camera or in a noisy environment or whatnot. But lots of phones have built-in sound recorders. You can get dedicated little, what they used to be called mini cassette recorders, but now they're all memory-based, so they're just little mini recorders. You can use those. There are dedicated devices which, you know, cost a couple of $100 or more, that are specifically designed for field recording. You can use just about anything you get your hands on that's got a microphone and the ability to record, and record it that way and then sync it up with your camera later. Now, as questions about wind go when you're filming outside, and wind is a nightmare for most microphones, particularly microphones built into cameras, because they don't have the big fluffy windshields on them and stuff like that that you see the pros using. And the trick to that is, if you're in a windy environment, find somewhere sheltered outside of the wind, or make sure your microphone is pointed out from the wind. I mean, if you record and there's lots of wind noise, you've got no hope of recovering that sound. There is no special filter, there's no special trick, there's no special software that's going to get rid of the wind hitting your microphone, because the microphone just doesn't have the information there to try and recover. You can filter it and try and make it a bit clearer, but it's always going to sound awful. So the trick to recording in windy environments is don't, or find somewhere sheltered. It's basically that simple. Alright, so let's talk about external microphones. These are highly recommended gear. If you're recording at home with a webcam, get an external microphone for your computer, because the ones built into most webcams are fairly ordinary. You're going to get a much better result with an external microphone. And when it comes to shooting on location, you can use the microphone that's built into your camera. They usually work fairly well. Once upon a time they were fairly awful, but camera manufacturers these days are sort of getting the hint, and the microphones in them are getting better and better and better. And if you happen to have a camera that has an input for an external microphone on it, you can get what's called a shotgun microphone, which are those long microphones you often see mounted on top of cameras. They help focus the sound to what's directly in front of the camera. They're specifically designed to help isolate background noise from the side and the back of the camera and all that sort of stuff. They can help lots. You can use a handheld microphone, and I use this a lot when I'm on location, because again, when you're standing a fair way back from the camera, a handheld mic is the very, very best way to get really clean audio, especially when you're interviewing someone or you're just talking to it or whatnot. And, you know, the same way I'm holding this right in front of me, I'm using this as I walk around for exactly the same purpose, so I get nice, clear audio. And remember guys, sound accounts for more than half your video. Even if your vision looks crap, and I've said this before and I'm saying it again because it is that important to understand, even if your video looks really ordinary, as long as your sound is clear, you can get your message across and people aren't going to mind so much. If your audio is awful, but your picture looks wonderful, you can't deliver your message. It's really that simple. Audio is the most important thing about video. Just hammer that into your minds. Constantly think about it. Whenever you shoot anything, audio, 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 then vision. Alright, so that's audio out of the way. Now let's talk about lighting. Lighting is almost as important as audio. Now, it doesn't matter whether your camera is the cheapest thing you can find or the most expensive thing you can find, it is always going to get a better picture if you light your subject properly, or at all. And this brings us to the second part of GMango2126's question. Also, when indoors, how exactly do you get your lighting to work properly without completely washing you out or making you look like you have colored yourself orange? Now, that orange cast comes from two things. One is the white balance on the camera. Now, the white balance on the camera tells your camera what it is seeing. If it's looking at something that to our eyes we would understand as white, cameras don't always understand that depending on lighting conditions. Sometimes it can be cast depending on what type of lights are shining on it. Sometimes it looks a little bit orange, sometimes it looks a little bit blue, and a white balance setting in a camera tells it to that part of the image, that's white. So adjust all the other color spectrum, shift it so that bit's white and everything else will look normal. Some cameras have that, some cameras you can set it manually, some cameras it's automatic, some cameras don't have it at all. There are two ways you can fix a strange color cast in your picture. The first way, and this is the best way, avoid it in the first place. Set your camera properly. If you've got a manual white to balance setting, use it. If you don't, and the automatic system doesn't work, you can often fix it in software, but this does require the fancier video editing equipment. You can fix it with something called color correction, or sometimes you can, there are other settings you can sort of fiddle with the hue. It's going to vary depending on which software you're using, and I can't sort of give you a solid guide, say do this, hit this switch, slide this slider, because it's different for all the different editing, and I don't have the time to cover all of them. But look for something called color correction, or look for something called hue. Those are the two big things. You can sort of play with the color temperature of your picture to fix lighting problems. The very best way to avoid a weird color cast problem is to completely avoid it in the first place. Now, if your particular lighting and camera setup happens to give you that sort of orangey glow or blue glow or whatever, just switch out the globes. You can get specialized globes, like from photography stores, or I found some in a weird Chinese import store the other day, and they are called daylight globes, and they are specifically designed to give off a white color spectrum that matches the color temperature of the sun. And those, by and large, are going to get you a very nice, evenly lit, properly lit picture. The skin tone's going to look properly skin toned, the white's going to look white, and everything is going to be bonza. And as far as the picture looking washed out or overexposed or excessively white or glary and stuff like that, again, it's best to fix that before you even press record. Move your lights further away. If you don't have the room to move them further away, point them away from you and bounce the light off a piece of white cardboard or something like that. Or you can get specialized reflectors from photography stores that have silver or gold reflectors on them that can alter the color temperature of the light as well. Or even if you've got a white wall, point your light at the white wall and the light will bounce off it. It'll soften the light up, it'll dim it a bit, it'll cool off that light as well. If you've got a very sort of hot light, bounce it off a white wall, it'll help cool that color temperature down again. The best way to solve all these problems with audio and lighting is to avoid having the problem in the first place, and that comes down to knowing the tricks of the trade, basically. Now, when it comes to shooting outdoors, you often don't have very much control over your lighting, so the trick is picking your location properly. So pick a spot where you're not in direct sunlight, because if I step into the direct sunlight here, you can see suddenly very, very harsh lighting. I'm all really bright here and dark shadows here, and it doesn't look really that good. But if I step back just into the shadows here, suddenly the lighting becomes a lot more even. You can also, again, use reflectors and filters and screens and stuff like that. If you've got sort of money to burn, you can buy this stuff from photography stores. You'll often see on professional shoots great big sort of, they look like white sheets just strung up to just sort of filter that direct sunlight, because direct sunlight, it doesn't look good on camera, so you've got to soften that light up. And it really doesn't matter whether you're shooting outdoors or in, avoiding those really harsh shadows, unless you're going for a particular style or effect where you want that sort of really harsh shadow. And it can look good in interview situations when you've got sort of pro gear and you can light it all properly and you've got barn doors and really expensive lights and you can fool around with it. But when you're at home, I mean, people have been asking what sort of lights can I use? I've done so many of my videos just using a regular desk lamp with an appropriate globe in it. Sometimes not even an appropriate globe. I've got this awful halogen desk lamp at home that I use sometimes, and you know, I try and fix the color in post-production using color correction like I talked about before. But I've also got a proper lighting rig which I set up when, you know, I can be bothered and I've got some time to burn. I'm not just making a quick video or something. I've got two sort of light stands, and I've got these great big lights on them that are proper professional photography lights, and umbrella reflectors and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, if you're really interested in finding out how to light really, really well, I mean, it's a subject that's too complicated for me to go in this particular video, but Google 3-point lighting. It is an industry standard on how to light a subject, and it basically consists of one light on your subject, one softer light a little bit further away, a little bit off to the side to fill in those shadows, and a light at the back just to sort of give it a little highlight, to sort of come on the shoulders and make the subject pop out from the background. There's lots more detail to go into about that, but just Google 3-point lighting and read everything you can get your hands on. Google lighting in general. I mean, there are lots of stuff you can learn that just won't fit into this video because I'm trying to keep it, you know, less than an epoch long. So congratulations to gmango2126 and your bizarre username. I'll be sending you an email shortly asking for your postal address so I can send it to the Sony guys so they can send you out your brand new Sony Bloggie, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I've enjoyed making these videos. Now, the take-home tip from all of these videos is basically use what you have available to you. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on the most expensive gear to get good-looking videos. You just need to know the tricks. You need to be conscious of the things more than just what you are looking at in your little viewfinder down there. You need to think about how your lighting's set up. And you don't need expensive lights. You can use desk lamps. I've used them for years and gotten away with it perfectly fine. And people go, why's your lighting so good? And I'm using a desk lamp. Or work lamps. Those big yellow work lamps you get from hardware stores. Really cheap way to get a lot of lighting for your videos and stuff. And the only problem with those is they get really hot, so if you sit in front of them you just pour with sweat, so you got to get them as far away from you as possible. And they're a little bit hard to control because they're just basically floodlights going bah! But I've used them, and I used them for years before I got my professional style lighting and stuff, and gotten away with it perfectly well. Use what you have available to you. Same goes for audio. If you have a mobile phone that can take audio and you want to do stuff further away from the camera, use it. You can buy a cheap little micro cassette recorder, digital memory recorders, what are they called now? But the trick is, just take advantage of the gear you have. You don't need to spend a bunch of money. You can do wonderful looking videos and wonderful sounding videos with budget stuff, and I've done it. I do it all the time. I have expensive gear and I have cheap gear, and I pick the gear that's appropriate to what I'm doing. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and thank you for sending in all those questions, which helps me mold this series as we go along, knowing what you want. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff that you've asked about that I haven't addressed. Maybe I'll come back and do another series of these sometime soon to readdress some more of those advanced stuff. I mean, I go through the questions things, and I've been answering questions and all that sort of stuff. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for sending any questions. Thank you for watching. I just said that. I'm Blunty, and I'll catch you next time.